In just 1 month, Richard Chase murdered 6 people, drank their blood, and ate their organs, and he believed he had to do it to stay alive. A man so mentally fractured, so twisted by his own delusions, that he became something beyond a killer. He became a vampire, and his name was Richard Chase. Before he terrified Sacramento, before the name Richard Chase became synonymous with blood and nightmares, he was just a boy. A quiet, awkward boy from a troubled home. Born in 1950 in Santa Clara County, California, Richard's childhood was anything but peaceful. His father was abusive. His mother was unstable. What they called discipline was more like fear training. As a child, Richard showed early signs of something dark festering inside. The kind of signs most people ignore until it's too late. He was withdrawn, isolated, obsessed with death. And the worst part? He started harming animals, rabbits, birds, even family pets. The McDonald triad is what psychologists call it. Bedwetting, arson, and cruelty to animals. A dark triad that often shows up in the early lives of serial killers. Check, check, and check. But this story isn't just about a killer. It's about a man who was slowly vanishing from reality and being replaced by something terrifying. He moved into his mother's apartment for a while, but soon even she couldn't handle him. She tried to get him help again, but no one listened. Richard Chase was now fully consumed by his blood delusions. He began capturing animals, cats, dogs, rabbits, strays mostly. He dissected them, drained them, and drank their blood. It wasn't about cruelty. Not to him. It was survival. A sick, twisted form of medicine. He believed the Nazis were poisoning him through a soap dish. He believed his skull was cracking and his bones were shifting. He believed blood was the only cure. He bought guns. He started breaking into homes, not to steal, but to look for blood, to test the locks, to see who was vulnerable. And in December of 1977, Richard Chase would finally cross the line from obsession into full-blown horror. December 29, 1977. Ambrose Griffin, a 51-year-old engineer and father, is helping his wife unload groceries outside their Sacramento home. Without warning, he collapses. A car slowly drives by. In it, Richard Chase. He had randomly fired a .22 caliber pistol out the window, killing Ambrose instantly. No motive, no pattern, just chaos. 3 weeks later, January 23, 1978, Chase enters the home of Teresa Wallen. She was 3 months pregnant. Her front door was unlocked. What he did inside, we won't detail. Not because we want to protect him, but because the horror is too real. He murdered her, mutilated her, drank her blood, performed rituals, and then he did it again. For days later, January 27, 1978, he enters the home of Evelyn Miroth. There were 4 people inside. Evelyn, her 6-year-old son Jason, her 22-month-old nephew David, and a family friend, Dan Meredith. He killed them all, in ways that shook the entire nation. He removed organs, stored parts, took blood. He even took David's body with him. By now, Sacramento was paralyzed with fear. People locked their doors, loaded their guns. No one felt safe, and the police were desperate. The final murder left a mess. Fingerprints, shoe prints, stolen wallets, a blood trail, and most importantly, a witness. A neighbor had seen a disheveled man leaving the Miroth house. They described him in detail, and just days later, Chase was spotted walking around his neighborhood, looking for unlocked doors again. The police swarmed in. When they arrested him, he was carrying a blood-stained box. Inside, parts of his last victim. His apartment, the walls were covered in blood. Dishes in the sink, full of body parts. A blender used to mix blood and organs. He wasn't hiding it. He believed it. He was surviving. The media called him a monster, the Vampire of Sacramento. But the courtroom called him something else, sane. Despite his history, the court ruled he understood his actions. And after a year-long trial, Richard Chase was sentenced to death. In prison, he was feared by other inmates, not because he was strong, but because he was terrifying. He never showed remorse. He never explained why. But in 1980, just 2 years after his arrest, Richard Chase died by suicide in his cell. He overdosed on medication he had been hoarding. It was quiet, cold, and almost empty, like the man himself. Richard Chase wasn't a vampire. He wasn't a monster from folklore. He was a man with a broken mind, a mind that screamed in pain and no one heard it. What makes his story horrifying isn't just the blood or the deaths or the rituals, it's how many people saw it coming. And still, it happened. He told doctors he was dying. He told his mother he needed help. He told the world through every action that something was terribly wrong, and no one stopped it. That's the part that stays with you, because how many more Richard Chases are out there, slipping through the cracks? How many more people are screaming into a system that doesn't listen? Until it's too late. People remember the name, the headlines, the horror, but no one talks about what happens after. The families, the children, the survivors who live with the nightmares, the mother who found her daughter, the father who held his dead child, the officers who walked into a crime scene and left something behind forever. We tell these stories not to glorify them, but to remember, to remind ourselves how fragile the mind can be, how quickly fear turns to violence, and how sometimes monsters aren't born. They're made, slowly, quietly, until it's too late. If you're as hooked on these disturbing stories as I am, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on the next one. I've got plenty more chilling tales and mysteries to share. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.